Hello guys and welcome back to Stylish Naija YouTube channel. Thank you guys for subscribing to my channel. Thank you for your support and your love. So guys, in today's video I'm going to be showing you guys how to cut an underbust corset with a Queen Anne neckline. So this is a tutorial has been requested a long time. I have one already, but this one I decided to do this one again. So you can see this is the pattern that we drafted, so I made it very detailed. So in this video we're going to be doing the cutting or the drafting, and then in our next video we'll sew it. So that's the back piece. I used an ankara for the back. So this is the fabric I'm going to be using for this. Is about 2 yards of fabric, but I'm not going to use up to that. So these are the measurements. As I go along I will explain. So I have some lines. The first one is my shoulder line, my bust point line, my under bust, my waistline or half cut, and then that's the hip line. Okay, so these are all of the basic lines that you need. So the next thing, you come to your shoulder line, mark your shoulder measurement, divide by 2, add it, and then come down by add allowance of 1 inch, and then come down by 1 inch. So that 1 inch that you came down with, you just slope that into the neckline to create a shoulder slope. So from that shoulder slope, measure 8 inches for your armhole. This is like standard, which is okay. So from that 8 inches, I'll just mark it, I'll connect it straight to that slope line. So I have my 8 inches. So this 8 inches now, I'll use it as my chest line. So it's optional, but it's always good to have a chest line. So it will help you to know how to fit your necklines. So the next thing I'm going to do now, I want to take out the dart. So for the dart, I'm going to use my bust palm measurement. That's nipple to nipple. So for this, I'm using 10 inches divide by 2. So I have 5 inches. So this 5 inches, I added extra 1 inch to it. Okay, so everything now is 5 inches. So that's what I'm trying to say. My bust pan is 9. So I added 1 inch to it to make it 10. So that 10, you divide it into 2. Just mark that across all the lines. Okay. Just mark the 5 inches on all the lines except the chest line. So after marking it there, the next thing we want to take out a dart. So the dart I want to use 2.5 inches dart. So I'll take 1.5 to the right and then 1 inch to the left. So from that and that line, I'll come to my under bust. That's where I place the dart line. So I'll connect it. I'll just use a straight ruler to roll it to the hip line. If you notice, I did not touch my bust point. Okay. So the next thing, I want to use a cuff to connect it now to the bust point, and then on this other side you connect it also. So remember, this right hand side I used 1.5 inches, and then on the other side I used 1 inch. Okay, so the next thing, I'll divide my shoulder line, that's from that shoulder line, into 2, and then I'll use my straight ruler to connect it to that bust point line like that. So you can see what I'm doing. So just connect it straight to that point. If you don't understand, just let me know in the comment section, I will explain more. So the next thing, from that point that I marked, I want to take out my neckline. So I'm just using a gauge. I'm not really going to use this. So I use 3 by 3, which is like standard, 3 inches by 3 inches. So the next thing now, I want to mark my yoke. That's the depth of the yoke. You know how deep that yoke will be. Before then, let's tighten our over bust. So to tighten it, I'll come to my chest line. So I want to use my chest line. I don't want it to go down too much, and I don't want it to go up too much. So I'll use 0.75. I'll mark it to the right and then mark it to the left on the chest line, on that line, on that line. So you can see it. So you just connect it. Just mark 0.75 to the right and then to the left, and then connect it to that curve, that original curve that is coming from the bust line. So connect it. You can use half inch for this, for somebody for a smaller bust. Okay, so the next thing now, this is me, I'm trying to double check how deep my yoke will be. So my client who actually wants it to come down a little bit more. If not, normally you can decide to go up to create that curve, but this, I want a little bit of cleavage, so I came down. So I'm trying to use about 9.5 inches from my shoulder line. So I'm just trying to get that 9.5 inch point on that point before I create my curve. So that's it, I've gotten it. I was just trying to double check again because I don't want it to be too deep and too small. So the next thing, I'll use my curve to curve it to the edge, to the leg of those over bust that I did there. Okay, so you just curve it in. So the essence of that over bust is to tighten that chest area. So you can see, so I've curved that. So I think I like the shape that I have. So I'm just trying to still double check it, okay? In case you want yours to come down more, you can come down. If you want it to go up, you can go up more. So that's what I'm just trying to explain here. Okay, so the next thing, I'm going to come to half of my armhole measurement, which is about 4. I'll mark it and then come in by quarter of an inch or half of an inch, and then I'll create a curve. Just create a curve with my ruler. So if in case you don't have a curve ruler, just you can just use your hand. Before I used to use ordinary hand to do it, and it will still work fine. So don't kill yourself. Okay, so just, yes, just mark it that way. The next thing now I'm going to do, so I'm marking my bust measurement. So I'll divide my bust measurement. So for this, I'm using a bust of 45. You divide 45 into 4. So now we're going to be placing all of our measurements. Divide 45 into 4, and then I am going to place that. So I'm just using the tape pattern, divide my tape. So I'll mark that, and then that over bust tightening, I'll bring that inch back and then add my sewing allowance. Remember to put it back or else it will get truncated. So I'll check on that chest line. I'll bring that back. The same thing I have there on that chest line, I'll mark it on my bust point line and then connect it because it's the same measurement. It's the bust measurement. Okay, so you don't want to mark something different there. So the next thing, on my under bust measurement, I'll divide that into 4. Divide your own, use your own applicable measurement, divide that into 4 and then mark it. Remember our dart, our 2.5 inches, that puts it back. Okay, and then mark it, connect it, and then the waist measurement, divide by 4. So I'm trying to check, so you remember that dart, so bring it back. Always bring in your dart back and then add sewing allowance to it. And then my waist measurement, also check what you have there, that bring it back and then add your sewing allowance. So when you are done with all of this, all those lines, you just use your ruler, you connect them like that. Okay, so after that, so I'm trying to check my dart leg to make sure that they are the same because I want to curve it, to create a curve into the armhole for the other side. Remember, I've not curved this side. So now I've curved it. So make sure you check and then you curve it into that point like that, into your armhole point. Okay. So I'm still trying to double check everything to make sure that all of my markings are okay before I continue that armhole point also. So now for us to create our Queen Anne is a simple process. Just come to the edge of your neckline, that edge, that where the 3 inches stop. That's where I'm putting my tape. You can see it. So you can see, you can curve it, depends on how wide you want it to be, but my own, I want it to be on top of the curve so you can see. So from the edge of the neckline, just create a straight line. But if you want your Queen Anne yoke, if you want it to be smaller, you can come in, you saw the way I was doing it that first time. You can come into your armhole side. It depends on you. So it depends on how big you want. So I'm just trying to double check from the edge of the neckline. That's, you can see it now, from the edge of that neckline, just mark it. So if you want it to come to be smaller, yes, you can mark it however, but use the edge of the neckline to do your curve, okay, your markings. So the next thing, I want to create a basket effect. So for this, I don't want a very sharp one. So I'll come by 5 inches and just curve that into the waistline part. So for this, it is optional. If you want it really sharp, you can use about 7 inches, but 5 inches is okay. So just for a slant curved basket. So after that, I'll just cut off all of my pattern. And then for the under bust, I'll come down by 1 inch. Don't It will not reduce my measurement because I added extra allowance when I was folding my paper. So I came down, I did not want to cut it exactly on the under bust line, so that's why I came down by 1 inch and then cut it out. Okay, so you can cut it exactly on your under bust, but that will affect your pattern, I tell you. You can use half of an inch. Okay, so now as you can see, I've cut out everything, so you can see the way the Queen Anne neckline is laying. So after that, now the next thing, we're going to draft out our back. So for the back piece, it's just a simple basic bodice. All of my lines have been added, and then I'm adding all my measurements. bust measurement, divide by 4. I'll connect it so you can see. Just connect it, add your same line so you can do your armhole curve. Under bust measurement, divide by 4, and then add stitching allowance, you connect it. So for this, if you have a basic bodice, you really don't need to go over this. Just use your basic bodice pattern. Waist measurement, divide by 4, add your stitching allowance. Hip measurement, divide by 4, just measure it like that, divide by 4, and then add your stitching allowance. So that stitching allowance, my one, I'm using 1 inch, that is already included. So for instance, if my stitching allowance is 3 inches, 1 inch I'll use for that. So the next thing I want to do now, I want to mark out my that. So I'll use my bust pan measurement, the same thing I did, 5 inches, and then I'll connect it with a straight ruler like that. So you can see I rolled it down. But note, I'm going to come to, I'll take half inch from my waistline so you can see. So half inch. But before then, I'll come to my bust measurement. I'll come down by 1 inch. I don't want the dart to hit my bust point. Okay. So I'll come down by 1 inch and then just create the curve from that waist to it, and then so that one I'll just loop it to the down part of my pattern like this. So for this, if you have a pattern that is already working for you, you can go ahead and use it. Okay, it's always good for you to try out different patterns so you don't run into any problem. So for the neckline, I'll use 3 inches width, and then from that point now I'll use 3 by 3. That's for like the back. Also 3 by 2, sorry, for the back neckline. So the next thing, I want to cut out my yoke. So for this, I actually did not decide the style of yoke I was going to use. So what I'm just going to do, so I'm just trying to show you the pattern. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to explain the yoke for you. Okay, so from this point I'm going to come down to my chest line point. So I just want to create, so from my edge, from the edge of my neckline, so that point, that's where I'm going to cut my yoke from. So from the edge of my neckline, you can see that edge. You can see I'm just creating a straight line. So you can make it slope, you can make it slanted. So it depends on what you want. But whatever you do, make sure it is aligning with the neckline. Don't come out more, don't go in more. Okay, so in case I want a straight line, or if I want it slanted, what however I want it, I can slant it so you can see what I'm trying to do. So I'm just trying to check. Like I said, I did not decide what I want. Okay, so you can see. So that most time, that's what I normally do when I'm sewing. As I'm working, then I'll choose what I want. So that makes you a better designer. You don't need to be conventional, going with everything that everybody is doing. So just be creative, add your own creativity. You don't need to copy everything that people are doing. So add your own style. Okay, to give you a uniqueness. So you can see after everything, I've cut them out. So these are my patterns now. So I'm just cutting them. So like I said, in the next tutorial, we're going to do all of the sewing of this. Okay. So guys, if you find this video helpful, please hit on the like button. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. I would appreciate that. So guys, so these are all of our pieces, all of them laid on the table for us. So this is my yoke. So I made another yoke, that is original yoke. I still have it in case I change my mind. Yes, thank you guys.